The call came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was deep into reviewing acquisition reports for my latest property development, scanning through projections and timelines, when my phone vibrated against the polished surface of my desk. An unfamiliar number glowed on the screen. I answered without much thought. "Hello, this is Victoria Manning from Elegant Events Planning," a smooth, overly sweet voice announced. "I'm calling regarding the Henderson wedding scheduled for this Saturday." Henderson, my maiden name, hit like a dull echo from a life I'd buried 3 years earlier, the name I'd shed when I finally walked away from my family's endless control and subtle cruelty. "Yes," I replied, placing my pen neatly beside the folder I'd been reading. "Well, I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news," Victoria continued, her tone shifting into something clipped and faintly superior. "You've been removed from the guest list. Per family instructions, you are no longer invited to attend." I leaned back in my leather chair, my gaze drifting to the Chicago skyline beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of my 47th floor office. Below, cranes and construction crews moved like clockwork around the skeleton of Anderson Plaza, the newest addition to my quietly expanding real estate portfolio, an empire my family knew nothing about. "I see," I said calmly. There was a brief pause on the line, then a soft exhale of relief. "Wonderful. That simplifies things. I was told you might react badly or cause a scene. Anyway, have a pleasant day." The call ended abruptly. For a moment, I simply stared at my phone. Then I laughed, the sound sharp and genuine in the silence of my office. They had actually done it. My own sister had officially uninvited me from her wedding. The same wedding booked at Grandview Manor, the most prestigious venue in the city, a property I'd purchased 6 months earlier through my holding company, Morrison Properties, LLC. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. My assistant, David, poked his head through the door. "Miss Anderson, your 3 o'clock appointment has arrived." "Cancel it," I said, still smiling. "And bring me the acquisition file for Grandview Manor." Less than 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Same number. "Miss Anderson?" Victoria's voice came through, now thin and frantic, stripped of its earlier confidence. "I am so terribly sorry for the misunderstanding." "We had no idea that you own the venue. None at all. Please tell me there's something we can do. The wedding is tomorrow." I let the silence linger, just long enough for her panic to deepen. "Victoria," I said at last, "I think we should speak in person." "Of course, absolutely. I can come to you or you can come here, whatever is easier. You're the owner, after all, and I am beyond embarrassed." "I'll be there within the hour." Grandview Manor stood on 12 immaculate acres in Highland Park, roughly half an hour north of downtown Chicago. The first time I'd seen the property, I'd known it was a rare opportunity. A restored 1920s estate surrounded by lush gardens, a grand ballroom capable of hosting 300 guests, and a series of elegant rooms ideal for intimate ceremonies and receptions. It was a magnet for Chicago's elite, a place where society weddings and high-profile events unfolded. From a business standpoint, it was flawless, fully booked for 2 years, with couples paying anywhere between $50,000 and $200,000 for their perfect day. What I hadn't anticipated was my sister Emma choosing it for her wedding to Bradley Ashworth III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune and, according to my mother, the only man who had ever truly elevated the Henderson name. Victoria was waiting for me in the main lobby, twisting her hands nervously. She looked younger than I had imagined, perhaps in her late 20s, her blonde hair immaculately styled, her tailored designer suit whispering luxury. "Miss Anderson," she rushed forward, "I truly cannot apologize enough. I had no idea. Your sister only said that you were not welcome and insisted that I handle the matter." We walked into the main office and I fixed her with a steady look. "What exactly did Emma say about me?" Victoria hesitated. "She described you as the family embarrassment," she admitted quietly. "She said you'd abandoned the family firm for some unsuccessful startup and that your presence would be awkward for their guests." I nearly laughed. Unsuccessful. 3 years ago, I had worked at Henderson Financial Group, my father's prized investment company. I had given them 60-hour weeks, landed high-value clients, and brought in millions, only to be treated like an expendable intern. My ideas were brushed aside, my achievements credited to my brother, Marcus, and my mistakes, however minor, were amplified as proof of my inadequacy. The final blow came when I uncovered that Marcus had claimed full credit for a municipal bond deal I had structured, one that netted the firm $12 million in fees. When I confronted my father, he dismissed my concerns, telling me I was being overly emotional and should focus on learning from my brother. That night, I made my decision. I left with my savings, my network, and my ambition, vanishing from their world without a backward glance. "Tell me about tomorrow," I said, settling into the chair across from Victoria's desk. She opened a thick folder, flipping through neatly organized schedules and layouts. "It's set to be spectacular. 250 guests. The ceremony will take place in the Rose Garden at 4 p.m., followed by cocktails and hors d'oeuvres on the terrace. Reception in the grand ballroom." The Ashworth family spared no expense. This is easily a $180,000 event. And Emma specifically said I wasn't welcome. She was very clear about it. She said, and I quote, "Under no circumstances is my sister to be allowed anywhere near this wedding. She's already embarrassed our family enough, and I won't have her ruining the most important day of my life." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. "Victoria, I need you to call Emma. Tell her there's been a problem with the venue for tomorrow." "A problem? But everything's perfect. The flowers are being delivered in the morning, the catering staff is confirmed, the band has already done their sound check." "Tell her the venue has been double booked and we need to discuss alternative arrangements." Victoria's face went pale. But that's not true. And even if it were, we couldn't possibly find another venue of this caliber with less than 24 hours notice, not for a wedding of this size and importance. "I know," I said simply. It took Victoria a moment to understand what I was really asking her to do. When it hit her, her eyes widened. "Miss Anderson, you can't be serious." "Make the call." My phone rang 15 minutes later. "What do you mean the venue is double booked?" Emma's voice was shrill enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Emma," I said calmly, "don't you Emma to me. This is a disaster. Do you have any idea how much money we've spent on this wedding? The flowers alone cost $15,000. And now you're telling me some incompetent wedding planner screwed up the booking?" "Actually, there wasn't a mistake in the booking." Silence. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Victoria called you because I asked her to. You see, Emma, I own Grandview Manor. I have for the past 6 months." More silence. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. You're barely scraping by with your little computer business." Little computer business. She only knew. "Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You have 2 choices. You can apologize for uninviting me from your wedding, your sister, and we can pretend this conversation never happened. Or you can find somewhere else to get married tomorrow." "You're bluffing. This is some kind of sick joke. You probably called pretending to be the venue owner just to mess with me." "Check the property records, Emma. Morrison Properties, LLC, purchased Grandview Manor in April. Morrison Properties is my company." I could hear her breathing heavily. "Even if that's true, which I don't believe, you wouldn't actually cancel my wedding. You're not that cruel." "You're right. I said I'm not cruel. I'm just not interested in hosting events for people who consider me an embarrassment to the family." "This is insane. I'm calling Dad. He'll straighten this out." "Please do." The line went dead. My phone rang again 20 minutes later. This time it was my father. Sophia, what the hell is going on? Emma is hysterical, claiming you own some wedding venue and you're trying to sabotage her wedding. Hi, Dad. How have you been? It's been what, almost 2 years since we last spoke? Don't play games with me. Emma says you're threatening to cancel her wedding venue. I'm not threatening anything. I simply informed her that as the owner of Grandview Manor, I have the right to choose which events I host. Silence. Then you own Grandview Manor among other properties? Yes. How? You left Henderson Financial with nothing. You had maybe $50,000 in savings? I had more than savings, Dad. I had 3 years' worth of contacts from working at your firm. I had a deep understanding of Chicago's real estate market from all those municipal bond deals I worked on, the ones Marcus took credit for. And I had something else you never bothered to notice. I had talent. This is ridiculous. Even if you somehow manage to buy one property, Grandview Manor is worth at least $8 million. There's no way you could afford something like that. Dad, do you remember the Millennium Development Project? The one where the city needed $200 million in financing for the new cultural district? Of course, that was Marcus's deal, one of his biggest successes. No, Dad, that was my deal. I spent 8 months building the relationship with the city planning committee. I structured the entire financing package. I negotiated the terms with the contractors. Marcus just signed the papers and took the photo for the company newsletter. That's not. And the Patterson Industrial Acquisition, the one that earned Henderson Financial a $15 million fee, that was mine too. I identified the company as an acquisition target. I built the financial models. I pitched the deal to Patterson's board. Marcus presented my work and got a promotion. I could hear him breathing heavily. For 3 years, I built your business, while you and Marcus took all the credit and told me I wasn't smart enough, wasn't aggressive enough, wasn't a real Henderson. So I left, and I started over. The difference is, this time, I kept the credit for my own work. Even so, one property doesn't make you some kind of real estate mogul. I pulled out the folder David had prepared for me earlier. Morrison Properties currently owns 17 commercial properties in the Chicago metropolitan area with a combined value of approximately $180 million. We also hold majority stakes in 3 development projects that will break ground next year. And we're currently in negotiations to acquire the Henderson Financial Building. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Dad, you're trying to buy our building? I already made the offer. Your landlord seemed very interested. Something about Henderson Financial being 3 months behind on rent. Another long silence. What do you want, Sophia? I want my family to treat me with the same respect they show strangers on the street. I want Emma to apologize for uninviting me from her wedding, and I want all of you to stop pretending I'm some kind of failure just because I chose to succeed outside of your little kingdom. And if Emma apologizes, if we acknowledge that we misjudged your situation, then she has a beautiful wedding at one of the most exclusive venues in Chicago, and we all move forward like a real family. And if she doesn't? I looked out the window of the venue office, where a team of gardeners was putting the finishing touches on the rose garden where Emma's ceremony was supposed to take place tomorrow. Then she spends the next 18 hours trying to find somewhere else to get married. This is blackmail. No, Dad, this is business. Something I learned from you, actually. He hung up without saying goodbye. An hour later, Emma called back. Her voice was quieter now, less hysterical. Sophia. Yes? Mom says I should apologize. What do you think? A long pause. I think I don't understand how this happened. How you went from being our family's disappointment to owning half of Chicago without any of us knowing about it. I went from being your scapegoat to being successful. There's a difference. We really hurt you, didn't we? It was the first time any of my family members had acknowledged that their treatment of me might have been unfair. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot of resentment I'd been carrying for 3 years. Yeah, Emma, you really did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for uninviting you, and I'm sorry for calling your business a failure, and I'm sorry for all of it. I don't know how to fix this, but I want you at my wedding, if you'll still come." I thought about it. I could make her grovel more. I could demand apologies from the rest of the family, make them acknowledge every slight, every dismissive comment, every time they'd made me feel small and worthless. But Emma was still my sister, and underneath all the entitlement and casual cruelty, I could hear something I hadn't heard in years: genuine remorse. "I'll be there," I said finally. "Really? Really?" But Emma, "Yeah, this conversation never happened, as far as anyone knows. Tomorrow I'm just another wedding guest who happens to appreciate fine venues." "I understand. And, Sophia, thank you." The next day, I arrived at Grandview Manor at 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the ceremony. I had chosen my outfit carefully: a navy blue dress that was elegant but not attention-grabbing, paired with understated jewelry. I wanted to blend in, not make a statement, but as I walked through the main entrance, I couldn't help but feel a quiet pride looking around at the venue I'd restored and transformed into Chicago's premier wedding destination. Emma looked beautiful in her wedding dress, a custom creation that probably cost more than most people's cars. When she saw me, she broke away from her bridesmaids and hurried over. "Sophia, you came." "Of course I came. You look stunning, Emma." "Thank you. And thank you for everything. The venue is absolutely perfect." "I'm glad you're happy with it." She hesitated for a moment, then leaned in closer. "Can I ask you something? Are you really as successful as you told Dad yesterday?" I smiled. "More successful, actually, but let's talk about that another time. Today is about you and Bradley." The ceremony was beautiful. Emma and Bradley exchanged vows in the rose garden under a perfect September sky, surrounded by family and friends who had no idea that the venue owner was sitting in the third row watching her sister marry into one of Chicago's most prominent families. During the cocktail hour, I found myself in conversations with several of the guests, many of whom, it turned out, were potential clients for my development projects. By the time dinner was served, I had 3 new business cards and 2 meeting requests for the following week. My father approached me during the reception, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. "Sophia? Dad? Can we talk?" We walked out to the terrace, away from the noise of the party. "I owe you an apology," he said, without preamble. "For what specifically?" He winced at the directness of the question. "For underestimating you, for taking you for granted, for letting Marcus take credit for your work, and for making you feel like you had to choose between being part of this family and being successful." I studied his face. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, more worn down. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Did you know Marcus was taking credit for my deals?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I suspected, but you didn't stop it." I told myself it was character building, that you needed to learn to fight for recognition. What you really thought was that Marcus deserved the credit more than I did because he was your son and heir, and I was just the daughter who would eventually get married and leave the business anyway. He didn't deny it. "I'm proud of what you've built, Sophia Pooh. I just wish we could have built it together." I looked back through the windows at the reception where Emma was dancing with her new husband while their friends and family celebrated around them. It was the kind of life I'd once thought I wanted. The approval of my family, a place in their world, their recognition of my worth. "Dad, I want to show you something." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, showing him the account balances for Morrison Properties and its subsidiaries. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the numbers. "Jesus Christ, Sophia! You're worth more than Henderson Financial Group, more than the Ashworth family, more than anyone at this wedding, actually." "How?" "The same way you built your business, Dad. One deal at a time, except I did it without anyone's help and without anyone taking credit for my work." We stood in silence for a while, listening to the music and laughter drifting out from the ballroom. "What happens now?" he asked finally. Now, Emma has a beautiful wedding at a venue she'll always remember. And maybe, if you're interested, we can have a conversation about what it might look like for Henderson Financial to work with Morrison Properties on some upcoming projects. You'd be willing to do business with us? After everything. I'd be willing to do business with you, Dad, but as equals, not as the daughter who needs her father's approval, but as the CEO of a company that might benefit from a partnership. He nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. Good. Have your people call my people on Monday. He laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. When did you become so ruthless? I learned from the best. As the evening wounded down and the guests began to leave, I found myself saying goodbye to Emma one last time. Thank you, she said, hugging me tightly, for everything, for the venue, for coming, for not letting me ruin this completely. You didn't ruin anything, Emma. You just learned something important about making assumptions about people. What's that? That you never really know what someone is capable of until you give them a reason to show you. I drove home to my penthouse apartment thinking about the events of the last 24 hours. My family had spent 3 years assuming I was a failure, that I had thrown away my potential and embarrassed the Henderson name by leaving their world behind. What they didn't understand was that I hadn't thrown anything away. I'd invested it, all my talent, my knowledge, my connections, and yes, my anger, into building something bigger and better than anything they'd ever dreamed of. The wedding was just the beginning. On Monday, I had meetings with 3 major developers, a city planning session for the new cultural district expansion, and a conference call with investors about the Morrison Properties IPO we were planning for next year. But tonight, I was just Sophia Anderson, the woman who owned the most beautiful wedding venue in Chicago and who had finally gotten the apology she deserved from the family who had never believed in her. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it's also the beginning of something better than revenge. Reconciliation built on respect instead of assumption. Love tempered with understanding, and a family that finally sees you for who you really are, instead of who they thought you should be. As I fell asleep that night, I smiled, thinking about Victoria's panicked phone call earlier that day. She had no idea that her mistake had given me something I didn't even know I wanted, the chance to show my family that the daughter they dismissed as a failure had become the woman who could make or break their most important moments with a single phone call. Tomorrow, we would all wake up in a different world, one where Sophia Henderson was no longer the family disappointment, but Sophia Anderson, CEO of Morrison Properties, and the woman who had turned her family's dismissal into the motivation to build an empire they never saw coming. And honestly, that felt better than any wedding I'd ever attended.